Actor Armie Hammer has been one of the most promising actors in Hollywood, but all of that is in doubt thanks to shocking allegations from his ex-girlfriend. Allegations so sick, they conjure up images of Hannibal Lecter character.
Just recently, within the last several months, there was an Instagram account that popped up, a woman claiming that she had an alleged encounter, an affair with Armie Hammer, ongoing, and started to reveal things that were pretty disturbing.
He abused me mentally, emotionally, and sexually.
More women have come forward, though, kind of expressing their own stories, their firsthand accounts of weird behavior, things that have involved talk of cannibalism, talk of sexual preferences like BDSM.
If I were to submit to him at the level where he could, call me and say one word and get me to come on command, like Pavlovian dog style, like kind of getting you into this like submissive space where he's, the dominant.
I would have like hand marks, like that would stay on my body. He bites really hard and he tells you to wear them like a badge of honor. Almost like he convinced me that I'm lucky to have it. It's like, as up as that sounds, at that time, I was interpreting that as love.
There was another girlfriend that we also spoke to named Paige Lorenz, who shared a photo with us where he used a knife to carve his initial into her skin.
It was always biting, slapping, hitting, sexual though. It wasn't like the traditional abuse or anything like that. Ultimately, I just wanted to please him, and in that moment, I would have let him do anything.
Oh, he's a cannibal. Oh, the family does this. My own son didn't come out and defend himself. And I had a pastor say one time, if you come to your own defense, it's the only defense you're ever going to have. So we believe that God is our defense. And now the truth is coming out as he spoke on Piers Morgan and Bill Maher, and he was not criminally wrong, he was morally wrong, but it's changed his life forever.
American actor Armie Hammer was on the road to becoming Hollywood's next golden star when in 2021, his career hit a standstill after allegations of abuse were made against him. Best known for his breakthrough role in the 2010 film The Social Network, Hammer would flee Hollywood and run off to the Cayman Islands. After years of keeping a low profile, the disgraced actor recently made headlines after his appearance on the Piers Morgan show. In this episode, we will discuss the scandal that changed the course of Hammer's career and took him from being a rising star to being canceled. Armie Hammer was born Armand Douglas Hammer on August 28, 1986, in Los Angeles, California, to parents Drew Ann Mobley and Michael Armand Hammer. Despite coming from an affluent family, Hammer was determined to be an actor and even dropped out of high school to pursue it. By 2017, after years of acting, Hammer would receive his first Golden Globe nomination for Best Supporting Role in the movie Call Me By Your Name. From 2017 to 2018, Hammer was recognized for his notable film works in the independent film industry and was awarded the Outstanding Achievement in Cinema Award by the Savannah Film Festival. Upon his success, Hammer would go on to star in the films Wounds in 2019 and Rebecca in 2020. But with Hammer's career on the rise, he and his wife of 10 years decided to call it quits. It was July 2020 when they posted a matching statement on Instagram announcing their split. It should be noted that at the time, they wouldn't disclose the reasons for their separation, but it would later be revealed that Hammer had been unfaithful to his wife. Their Instagram statement read, 13 years as best friends, soulmates, partners, and then parents. It has been an incredible journey, but together we've decided to turn the page and move on from our marriage. We understand this news lends itself to public dialogue, but in the interest of our children and our family, we're asking for privacy, compassion, and love during this time.
I mean, it was a good year before the allegations first emerged that you and your wife announced you were going to get divorced. Did she know about this? Were you honest at that time about any of the infidelity, or were there other reasons at the time that were the cause of the breakup?
I mean, infidelity was a key factor in our.
So she knew you'd been unfaithful.
Yes, I told her that I was unfaithful.
What made you be honest in the end?
I got to a point where I realized I was becoming someone that I didn't recognize and didn't want to be. And then I came clean to my wife at the time and told her what was going on. And
did you tell her the scale of it?
At this point, it had only been one person. I had an affair on my wife. Obviously, I'm not the first person in the history of Hollywood to do that, but I did it. And it's less than becoming behavior that I have to own and take accountability for. And I have to also own the pain that I caused.
How many women did you sleep with?
You know, I was married for a long portion of that. And I was faithful for a long time in my marriage. And I think that really saved me from going too far off the deep end. You know, for the first 7 years of my marriage, which, you know, included, you know, a year of engagement and all that stuff, I was monogamous. I was faithful. I didn't cheat on my wife.
What made you finally cheat?
I think that I got to a point where I want to answer this really carefully. I think what happens in long-term relationships are the two people will grow constantly. And if the people start to grow apart, at first it's minuscule, it's unrecognizable, and it's like a tanker ship going on the open sea. If they're off by 1 degree for the first mile, you probably don't notice. 5 miles, you're a little bit offshore. But you go 500 miles or 1,000 miles, you lose sight of each other and you're in a fog bank. And all of a sudden, when you're lost and you've lost your partner because you're not checking in with each other, which is a two-way street, you can't find that person again. And I think that's what finally happened in my marriage. I think you have two people who grow, which everyone will do, but they weren't growing necessarily together.
And from that first moment that you took the decision to be unfaithful, again, I'll ask the question not because I want to be prurient. I'm just curious about how bad this problem got for you. How many women were there from that point?
Probably more than the average person would be exposed to.
Give me a ballpark.
I would say, I haven't done the math.
50, 100, 200, 500?
Sure. Maybe not 500. That's quite a bit. But
many hundreds.
I wouldn't say many hundreds. No. I would say enough.
After separating from his wife, Hammer was determined to move forward with his life and career. On January 1st, 2021, Hammer posted the following message to X, formerly known as Twitter. Quote, 2021 is going to kneel down before me and kiss my feet, because this year I'm the boss of my own year. 2020 was a cheap shot no one was expecting. Now I know what we are up against, and it's time to go to war. Know thy enemy, know thyself, exploit the differences. Upon posting this message, Hammer would find himself in a crisis that would completely derail his career after an anonymous woman on Instagram posted that she had a 4-year-long affair with the actor, during which, she says, he sent her graphic and violent text about cannibalism, rape fantasies, and his desire to drink her blood. According to reports, the anonymous woman posted screenshots of messages Hammer allegedly sent to her and other women he had been intimate with. In one text, Hammer allegedly wrote that he, quote, wanted to cut off his girlfriend's toe and keep it in his pocket. In another message, Hammer allegedly wrote, quote, talk to me, text me about breaking your bones, brand you, tattoo you, mark you, shave your head, and keep your hair with me. Cut a piece of your skin off and make you cook it for me. I want to see everything. I want to see your brain, your blood, your organs, every part of you.
These messages began to leak out all over the internet across 2 days. some of them, and I'll read just a few, 3 of them. You just live to obey me and be my slave, you said to her. I will own you as my soul, my brain, my spirit, my body. Would you come and be my property till you die? If I wanted to cut off one of your toes and keep it with me in my pocket, so I always had a piece of you in my possession. I'm 100% a cannibal. I want to eat you. It's scary to admit. I've never admitted that before. It was that stuff which obviously blew off around America and around the world. Armie Hammer, I'm a cannibal, in your own words.
Right.
Let's first of all address that elephant in the room. Are you a cannibal?
No. You know what you have to do to be a cannibal? You have to have actually eaten someone.
Have you ever eaten any human flesh?
No.
What do you feel that a large swathe of the public just think Armie Hammer is a cannibal?
If you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you. Yeah.
But the reason they would believe it is because you said it.
Sure.
I'm 100% a cannibal.
And I think a lot of these things, these text messages, it's this. This was a very intense affair, very sexually charged between 2 people with very similar proclivities and kinks. And any of those conversations that we had inside of that relationship, when you take them outside of that context and put them into broad daylight, it doesn't look so good.
And we've never seen what she was saying.
Correct.
There were rape fantasies. Is your position that all of this was just role play? That it may be offensive to people to hear about this and to read about it, but it's kind of BDSM, kinky sex role play. It's not actually meant to be taken seriously as you wanting to rape her or to be a cannibal. Is that your argument about the way all this played out?
It's not only my argument, that's the reality of the situation.
Who first raised the concept of cannibalism as a role play?
I think that was just sort of like born out of a desire to sort of like, I want you so completely and I want you so totally that it's almost like I want to eat you. But I don't think that's any different than when someone looks at a baby and goes, oh my God, look at those cute little fat legs. I just want to eat you up.
Hammer's alleged messages would spread all over social media, causing severe backlash for the actor. On January 13, 2021, one day after things surfaced, Hammer dropped out of Shotgun Wedding, a movie he was set to star in alongside Jennifer Lopez. In a statement released to Variety, Hammer said in part, quote, "I'm not responding to these BS claims, but in light of the vicious and spurious online attacks against me, I cannot, in good conscience, now leave my children for 4 months to shoot a film in the Dominican Republic." Upon dropping out of Shotgun Wedding, more screenshots of Hammer's alleged messages continue to circulate online. On January 14, 2021, a woman by the name of Courtney came forward and told Page Six that she dated Hammer from June to October in 2020. According to Courtney, the actor subjected her to emotional abuse, sexually coerced her, and made her feel unsafe. She told Page Six, quote, "He did some things with me that I wasn't comfortable with. For God knows what reason. He convinced me that these things were okay, and he put me in some dangerous situations where I was not okay, where he was heavily drinking, and I wasn't drinking that way, and it scared me." According to Courtney, Hammer tied her up with ropes so tight they left marks on her body. She claims he bit her, leaving teeth imprints on her skin. She also alleged that he would call her incessantly and show up to her house uninvited.
On January the 14th, this is 2 days later, Courtney Vucekovic, who was an app founder who dated you in 2020, or said she did, from June to October 2020, told the New York Post Page Six that you subjected her to emotional abuse, sexually coerced her, and made her feel unsafe. And she repeated some of this in the documentary House of Hammer about you. Let's take a look.
He puts on this creepy playlist and just like it's Like the ropes were like around your neck, your wrists, your ankles, behind your back. It's like, it was, I mean, I had bruises, I hated it. It's like, I understand that if this is like your fantasy or this is your thing, more power to you, but this was not, I didn't like it. And it's like, it didn't feel safe or like, I didn't feel like loved, or it was just horrible. And you're like completely immobilized. And it's like, there's something about trauma while you're immobilized and can't move. There's that fight or flight. You can't do either. You're just stuck there. And I'm just closing my eyes until it ended. And then he just went to sleep. Like, it was nothing.
First, have you ever watched that documentary?
I watched part of the first episode.
Have you seen that clip before?
I don't remember that clip.
What's your response to what she was saying there?
I mean, I think first and foremost, I understand why that's a compelling clip. You have a woman expressing unsafety and fear and all of those things. I understand why that is a powerful clip. I disagree with the nature of our relationship and how she described it. I will say this. There are people that I left who were hurt and who were upset. None of those people were hurt or upset because I pushed any sexual boundaries that they weren't interested in exploring or trying.
Are you sure about that? I'll ask you a different way around. Can you be sure about that? I mean, it can be that women, we know this, right? I mean, some women can go along with things because they're in your thrall and they want to keep you happy. But it may be at the same time they're not really enjoying it at all.
And I understand now the nature of the power dynamics of these relationships, where because of, you know, my position or my career or my notoriety or fame or whatever you want to say, that people might be inclined to go along with something that isn't necessarily their bag of tea. I also know that in my sexual relationships with people, I was very cognizant and very aware about presenting. These are my desires. These are my kinks, if you will. Do any of these sound good to you? And then they would say, oh, I like this, and oh, we can try this. I've never tried that. I have questions, but I'm not saying no, and I don't like this, or I don't like this. And then you say, okay, great. Well, let's move slowly through this. If this is anything you want to try, we can try them. And we will make sure we do it safely and with communication and with healthy boundaries. If it's nothing that you want to try, then great, we won't do any of that.
How would a woman you had that conversation with, how would she express concern once you'd started?
I would make sure that it was very clear that at any point, whatever was going on could be stopped.
How?
We had safe words, which is a very important part of BDSM.
So what were they?
Orange was pause, meaning I feel a little overwhelmed, but I don't necessarily want to stop. I just need a second. And then red is, I need this to stop immediately.
For those who don't know what BDSM is, what is it?
Bondage, dominance, sadomasochism. It's the idea of sort of heightened sexual scenarios.
Following Courtney's accusations, alleged screenshots from Hammer's secondary Instagram account began to spread online. The screenshots included several pictures and videos of women in bondage that Hammer had posted to his private Instagram account. Though this may have shocked many, Hammer had previously spoken about his interest in BDSM. In an interview with Playboy back in 2013, Hammer said, quote, I almost got kicked out of 8th grade for selling Playboy. Me and this guy had a ring where we'd bring magazines packaged with a bottle of lotion to school and sell them to the kids for $20. I don't know how much we can put here without my parents being embarrassed, but I used to like to be a dominant lover. I like the grabbing of the neck and the hair and all that. But then you get married and your appetites change. It's not like I'm suffering in any way, but you can't really pull your wife's hair. It gets to a point where you say, I respect you too much to do these things that I kind of want to do.
hot sex is just not politically correct. It's just not.
Yeah.
I mean, and sex that's politically correct, it's gotta suck. It doesn't have to go this far. Well, you have a great line in the thing where you said about why you couldn't do this with your wife. You said, you can't pull your wife's hair.
But see, I now, that's good. So I remember that interview. I was very drunk in that interview.
But wait, that's true.
I don't know that it is. I don't know that it is.
Okay.
I think that there is I think it's even called like the Madonna whore complex.
Yes, there is, of course.
Where it's like, if you want to have sex with your wife, where you want to feel free to grab hair, or you want her to X, Y, or Z, and she says no, maybe that's not supposed to be your wife.
Right.
Maybe there's a compatibility issue here that is going to lead to an expensive divorce.
Right.
You know? So, like, I don't know. Well, I think that if you're marrying someone who's not the right fit and then all of a sudden complaining about it, it's kind of on you, bro.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, bro meaning me.
This idea that's very much in the woke culture, that we should not shame people for whatever whatever they're doing outside the just old boundaries is good. The BDSM falls into that category. I think it's called the Diagnostic Manual of, I can't remember, but it's a very famous.
DSM.
Well, no, it's a book. It's the Psychiatry Bible. It's called the Diagnostic Manual of Mental Disorders or something. I call it the Big Book of Crazy.
Yeah.
The Big Book of Crazy says BDSM is no longer considered a disorder. Well, we look at it like trans.
Gay used to be in the DSM.
Exactly.
You know, I mean,
that's what my point is, that that it's a little squirrely for them.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to, you're getting hung on something that, on the other side of this. Yeah. That's like, we don't kink shame. We don't, this is a thing, and it's just like being trans or something that's different, but we don't shame it.
Because I have a wedge for your wedge, and it's this.
Well, hello.
Yeah. Let's talk. It's this,
There's
right?
a clip for the internet.
Yeah. I believe that someone has the right to think however they want to think, behave however they want to behave, and believe whatever they want to believe.
Yeah.
I'm affording them the right to do that. But I'm also reserving the right for myself to have my own opinion about it.
Yeah.
So if you want to do whatever it is that you want to do, whatever your proclivities might be, you go ahead and do that. But I get to have an opinion about this. And me having an opinion that doesn't align itself with what you're doing doesn't make me a bad person any more than it makes you wrong.
No, but
so if somebody looks at any behavior, mine, anyone else's, and goes, I don't like that, fine.
No, but it's the
you're allowed to think what you want.
But it's the action that has people more upset. But again,
but then where do you draw that line? Because the action between two gay people is probably something that would make a heteronormative person, who is very traditional, upset as well.
That's true. I mean, that's the Kevin Spacey case a little bit. I don't know anything. It's politically incorrect to say it, but I think there is a little bit of difference between the straight world and the gay world as far as approach.
Sure.
And not that it's.
Oh, by the way, all of my gay friends were like, honey, I saw your text messages. That's it. They go, oh my God, if people hacked into Grindr and put Grindr chats public, none of us would have jobs anymore. So it's like.
You have gay friends?
One.
They must be trying to fuck you.
Yeah.
Upon Hammer's private Instagram account getting leaked, another woman by the name of Paige would come forward to corroborate claims that the actor was dangerous and abusive. In an interview with Page 6, Paige claimed that she and Hammer had dated for 4 months in 2020, and that the actor had allegedly carved the letter A on her body. In a statement to Page 6, she said, quote, I kind of sat back and let it happen. I didn't really know what to do or say. As sad as that is, I wanted him to like me and feel like I was down for what he wanted. He would always tell me when he got back from the gym that he was bragging to his friends about carving an A into me. I have gotten a DM saying Armie had sent photos of me tied up that I didn't know about. I didn't even know the photos existed or what they look like. I don't know if I was blindfolded. There were red flags throughout the relationship. I guess I just put them to the side, and he made me feel so confident at times. He would talk about it like a traditional BDSM relationship, but it wasn't. This was way outside and beyond that. Hammer enjoyed hurting women, but used BDSM as a mask for this.
A third woman came forward a week after this, January 25th, Paige Lorenzi, who's a 24-year-old who claimed that you'd had a relationship for 4 months in 2020. She corroborated some of the other stories. She told Page 6 again that Hammer, you, allegedly branded her pelvis with the letter A, bruised her, sexually coerced her, took graphic photographs of her without her consent.
He bit me so hard that it wasn't a love bite or it wasn't really sexy. It was more just painful. And he did, like I said, on multiple occasions ask for me to remove my ribs. He said it so seriously. And I think he's obsessed with this idea of consuming and eating the person that he's with.
In addition to the biting and claims of cannibalism, another very scary moment was when Armie allegedly carved an A into her skin using a knife. The 22-year-old said that they were doing something called knife play, which is when someone runs a very sharp knife around the skin. Now, in theory, you don't cut the other person, but she says the actor actually did. It was extremely painful, and she almost blacked out. Now, Paige feels like she was manipulated by Hammer and calls him a danger to women. She's coming out now in the hopes of educating other women about these kinds of situations so that they can be equipped to get out of them as soon as possible.
Again, what is your response to what she claimed about you?
I disagree. I think that she is entitled to her opinion, and I
Did you brand her?
I wouldn't say brand, no, but, you know...
What did you do in relation to that allegation?
There was a scenario that we talked about beforehand, that we had discussed, where, you know, I would basically take a little tiny point and just kind of trace the letter A.
What do you mean a point? What do you mean?
Just like the tip of a small knife.
A knife?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you literally cut A?
I mean, there wasn't even blood in the situation. It was more like a scrape, just to sort of like enjoy the... It's along the lines of couples getting their own initials tattooed on each other. But, you know,
it's a bit different to a tattoo, though, isn't it? With a knife.
Well, it's less permanent.
It's a strange thing to do to somebody, isn't it? To use a knife to brand them with presumably your initial for your name.
Yes, I think to some it probably sounds really strange. To some it probably sounds like a very romantic gesture.
I don't even remember Christian Grey in 50 Shades doing that.
Sure. There was nothing to be gained for me in having a sexual experience that my partner didn't appreciate or enjoy, because that was also a huge sense of validation for me. Making this person that I'm with feel good. Making this person that I'm with, I mean, I don't know if I can say this, climax. Like, these were things that made me feel good and made me feel powerful, which I desperately needed because I didn't know how to give them to myself.
I mean, your team have shown me a lot of the messages, for example, from Courtney, which, if they are, I've not been able to independently verify. I'm going to make that crystal clear to the viewers, but on the assumption that they're true, they would certainly cast a very different light on the consensuality aspect of this. I mean, she certainly is clearly keen to keep doing this in these exchanges with you, even whilst professing to have thought differently at the time.
Yes.
Do you think in all these cases, if people could have seen, again, I think I've asked you this before, but in terms of the total allegations, if everyone could see all of the exchanges, do you think you'd be sitting here cancelled in the way that you are?
No.
Following Paige's claims, Hammer's estranged wife, Elizabeth, would make an Instagram post supporting all victims of assault and abuse. In her post, she writes, quote, "For weeks, I've been trying to process everything that has transpired. I am shocked, heartbroken and devastated. I support any victim of assault or abuse and urge anyone who has experienced this pain to seek the help he or she needs to heal. At this time, I will not be commenting further on this matter. On February 3rd, 2021, 2 days after Elizabeth's post, the Los Angeles Police Department would open their investigation into these claims. Upon their investigation, the anonymous woman who first accused Hammer of misconduct would hold a press conference on March 18, 2021. During the conference, the woman, who goes by the pseudonym Effie, told reporters that back in April of 2017, Hammer had violently SA'd her over the course of 4 hours. It's important to note that prior to this press conference, Effie responded to a commenter on Instagram and asserted that Hammer had never SA'd her. It's also important to note that when Elizabeth first found out that Armie was having an affair with Effie, she confronted her and scolded her for, quote, chasing after a married man. During their text exchange, Effie claimed that she was a fan of Hammer's and had assisted him with charity work. According to the messages, Effie apologized to Elizabeth for her involvement with the actor.
I met Armie Hammer on Facebook in 2016 when I was 20 years old. I fell in love with him instantly. The relationship progressed rapidly, and the emotions from both sides became really intense. Looking back, it is now clear to me he was employing manipulation tactics in order to exert control over me until I started to lose myself. He would often test my devotion to him, slyly removing and crossing my boundaries as he became increasingly more violent. He abused me mentally, emotionally, and sexually. On April 24th, 2017, Armie Hammer violently raped me for over 4 hours in Los Angeles, during which he repeatedly slapped my head against a wall, bruising my face. He also committed other acts of violence against me, to which I did not consent. For example, he beat my feet with a crop, so they would hurt with every step I took for the next week. During those 4 hours, I tried to get away, but he wouldn't let me. I thought that he was going to kill me. He then left with no concern for my well-being. I was completely in shock, and I couldn't believe this someone I loved did that to me. I tried so hard to justify his actions, even to the point of responding to him in a way that did not reflect my true feelings. During and since this attack, I have lived in fear of him, and for a long time, I tried to dismiss his actions towards me as a twisted form of love. Now that he no longer has any power over me, I have come to understand that the immense mental hold he held over me was incredibly damaging on many levels. His abuse traumatized me to the point where for months, I was unable to stop crying. I couldn't sleep or I'd have night terrors. I was constantly emotionally distressed and I lost interest in living. I couldn't comprehend and overcome what he had done to me. Over the years since the assault, on many occasions the invasive flashbacks were so excruciating that they made me feel there was no way out but to take my own life. I just wanted the pain to stop. My hope in speaking out about the abuse endured at the hands of Armie Hammer is that he will be held accountable. I feel immense guilt for not speaking out sooner because I feel that I might have been able to save others from becoming victims. By speaking out today, I hope to prevent others from falling victim to him in the future. I want other survivors of sexual assaults around the world to feel empowered and know that they are heard, believed, understood, and loved.
Immediately following Effie's press conference, Hammer's lawyer, Andrew Bretler, released Effie's last name as well as screenshots allegedly showing messages Effie had sent to Hammer. In a very explicit message, Effie is seen telling Hammer that she wanted to be with him intimately and that she was yearning for him. Hammer responded by telling her that he could not engage with her in that manner anymore, but that they could be friends. In a statement to the public, Hammer's attorney said, quote, "As recently as July 18, 2020, Effie sent graphic text to Mr. Hammer, telling him what she wanted him to do to her. Mr. Hammer responded, making it clear that he did not want to maintain that type of relationship with her. The screenshot is just one of hundreds Effie sent to Mr. Hammer." Bretler would also go on to state that, quote, "All of Hammer's interactions with Effie and every other partner of his for that matter were completely consensual, discussed, agreed upon in advance, and mutually participatory." Upon Effie's press conference, Hammer would be dropped by his talent agency and would subsequently drop out of several movies he had lined up. At the end of May, Hammer checked himself into a rehabilitation center for drug, alcohol, and sex issues. According to a family friend, Hammer had a lot of unresolved trauma that he'd buried, and it was time for him to get help. In a statement to Vanity Fair, the source said, quote, "Everyone looks at Armie thinking that he's had some sort of privileged life, and that must mean there were no problems in his youth and everything was peachy keen. But that's not necessarily the way things go. Just because you come from an upbringing where financial resources are plentiful doesn't mean life isn't without problems. He can literally drink a bottle of vodka and not feel it. His tolerance is crazy high for everything. He drinks a lot, and he smokes weed. I mean, there's no drug he won't do. He's addicted to drugs because he has so much trauma that he cannot deal with stillness, face himself, or sit alone. He's been about to explode for so long, but everyone laughs it off."
At the height of your partying, for want of a all-encompassing phrase, how hard were you partying? I mean, talk me through a big night out with Armie Hammer.
I mean, I definitely don't want to sound like I'm glamorizing.
No,
anything,
I know.
But like, I was really good at it. All my friends called me the water buffalo because whatever they would drink, I would drink all of that and more. Whatever drugs they were doing, I would take all of that and more. And when they were done or tapped out, I'd move on to the next group of people and go, all right, well, what are we getting into, guys? Like, it just...
What would you drink?
I mean, it would be a 7-8 martini dinner and then, keep going from there.
With what?
What do you mean?
Well, with what other drinks?
Whatever you had. The answer was yes. And
literally anything?
Literally anything. And the answer was always yes, and what else?
And what drugs did you take?
I mean, what did you have? I wasn't
cocaine, presumably, the Hollywood drug of choice?
Yeah. Oh, sure. There was cocaine involved. There was other stimulants.
Ecstasy?
There was, sure. Ecstasy.
Did you ever get into injecting anything?
No. Are
you relieved you never took that leap? Because that's the one that often kills people.
Yeah, that was never a draw for me.
Were you addicted to any one of those things, or were you addicted to partying?
I would say I was addicted to escapism. That I was addicted to anything that would get me out of myself. I felt such a deep sense of discomfort in my own body.
Why? I mean, look, I'm looking at a guy who should not be feeling uncomfortable about his body.
Yeah.
Right? You're a very handsome guy. You're very charming. I've seen interviews with you before it all blew up. I'm looking at you now and thinking, why would you feel discomforted by who you are, by your body?
Maybe there is something to the idea that no one would assume it or people wouldn't accept you to feel that way that lend itself to you feeling even more that way. Oh, well, you have everything in the world. You should be fine, so we're not worried about you. Like, pick yourself up by your own bootstraps kind of thing. But everybody needs help. I don't think...
But what were you escaping from?
I had... for probably a myriad of reasons, I had the inability to make myself feel okay unless there was something else doing it for me. I didn't know how to, I don't want to sound like I'm on the couch in therapy here, but I didn't know how to love myself. I didn't know how to accept myself. I didn't know how to be okay in my own skin. These were never anything that I was taught. And I don't think any of us really are. That's why therapy is such a huge industry.
There'll be some people who will say, oh, come off it, Armie. You were living the high life of a Hollywood star, a classic storyline, right? Of the good-looking, smart-talking, charming guy who just wants to party all the time. And that you can look back because things crashed and burned and say, actually, now I look back on it, I think I was running away, escaping, I was feeling this. Were you really feeling that at the time? Or do you think it's an explanation that you can now look back on with more clarity?
I think, like all things, it's not black and white. I'm sure there's a Venn diagram of both of those things, and the answer's probably found somewhere in the middle. At the time, did it just feel like I was having a good time? Yeah, some of the time, yeah. Other times, did it feel like I was so anxious and uncomfortable that I needed something? Yeah.
You entered a 12-step program after you reached rock bottom. What did that do for you?
It gave me a new life.
After completing rehab, Hammer would return to the Cayman Islands and quietly attempt to rebuild his life. About a year after the allegations came out, it would be reported that Hammer was working as a concierge at a Cayman Islands resort. On September 2nd, 2022, Discovery Plus released a 3-part docuseries called House of Hammer that detailed Hammer's relationships and family dynasty, according to Vulture.com. The docuseries would also highlight some of Hammer's romantic relationships and explore claims that he allegedly manipulated and gaslit previous partners. Additionally, Courtney, one of Hammer's accusers, would appear in the series and share her side of the story. Paige and Effie, however, would decline to participate in the series. According to Effie, she was very disappointed that Discovery Plus documented her story. In a statement to the press, Effie said, quote, "It is extremely inappropriate of you to exploit such a tragic, vulnerable time in many people's lives with no regard whatsoever for our healing process and privacy. The way they've been exploiting my trauma is disgusting. When I keep screaming no, and they keep going, saying they don't need my permission, they remind me of Armie." According to reports, Effie would also take issue with the fact that her lawyer, Gloria Allred, appeared in the series and spoke on her behalf. It should be noted that after appearing in the documentary, Gloria Allred dropped Effie as a client after Effie refused to sign the affidavit under penalty of perjury. Additionally, in a plot twist that page 6 describes as something out of a crime novel, Effie would later release messages from 2021 that were allegedly sent by Hammer's then estranged wife, Elizabeth. In the messages, Elizabeth is seemingly pressuring Effie into pressing charges against Hammer. In one alleged text, Effie tells Elizabeth that she feels like taking her life and that she didn't have time to talk to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, who was in a custody battle with Hammer at the time, responded and said, quote, "I really need custody of my precious children. Do you think you could make a declaration this week? It will all be private. I don't want to pressure you, but your insight is much more in-depth than the others we have. He hasn't even seen the kids, effing everyone who walks and taking a new blonde out on his dad's boat. I forced him to come here via court order to try to be a father, and now he's a risk to them. He needs to go. He needs to be locked up because he is hurting people. Again, I don't want to push you, but with your declaration, we can get him locked up for the evaluation. I'm asking for the eval and scans. I don't trust he won't trick a therapist." Upon Effie exposing the fact that she was in contact with Elizabeth, CNN would obtain emails and messages that allegedly showed Elizabeth using a friend's email account to contact media outlets about Hammer, both months before and after news of his extramarital affairs and allegations of abuse. In emails dated January 13th, 2021, Elizabeth allegedly provides screenshots from Hammer's private Instagram account to media outlets. In the correspondence, Elizabeth allegedly writes that Hammer had been photographed poolside, quote, smugly living his most privileged life as his career burns to the ground. According to reports, Elizabeth allegedly colluded with Effie in an attempt to get full custody of the children she shares with Hammer. According to Hammer, he would undergo a psych evaluation to determine whether or not he was a danger to his children.
She made you undergo psycho-legal evaluation involving the custody of your kids.
Yes.
That must have been an incredibly difficult thing for you to go through. I mean, you're the father of these children.
I see a mother doing what she felt she needed to protect her kids. I wasn't necessarily worried about the evaluation because I in your words, I'd never done anything to hurt my kids other than have, an affair and pick a very dangerous person to do it with.
Your wife was clearly very angry with you, made a number of allegations about you, but the report concluded you were not a danger to children.
I remember there was a time when I was under the evaluation where my daughter came up to me and she said, Dad, I need to go to the bathroom. And I looked at the therapist and I wasn't allowed to take my daughter to the bathroom. We had to get someone else to do it because I couldn't be alone with my child at the time. It was tough. It was a dark time. It was a dark time for everybody.
On February 4th, 2023, Hammer would speak out for the first time since the allegations came out in 2021. In an interview with Air Mail, Hammer admitted to being emotionally abusive, but maintained that his intimate encounters were always consensual. He acknowledged that there was an imbalance of power in his relationship with accusers Courtney and Paige, but denied their respective allegations of bodily harm and grooming. In the interview, Hammer asserts that Effie, the woman who accused him of violently SAing her back in 2017, actually planned the encounter, which was what he called a, quote, consensual non-consent scene related to BDSM. According to Hammer, Effie planned out the details of this role play via Facebook Messenger, and he followed along.
Things got a lot more serious several months later in 2021 when Effie Angelova, who'd had that lengthy affair with you, went public with accusations that you had raped her. That initiated an LAPD, Los Angeles Police Department investigation. Gloria Allred, the famed feminist attorney, took up her case. Was she telling the truth, do you think?
No. She wasn't.
About any of that?
There were sexual encounters that we had that were, I would say, more extreme in nature. But the encounter that she's talking about was something that we discussed and we planned. She planned. She said to me, I will be at this Starbucks at this time. I want you to follow me home. Then I want you to break into my house and I want this to feel like a real scenario. I want this to feel real. And we negotiated back and forth.
And the scenario was what?
It was what would be called in that sort of world consensual non-consent.
Right. Consensual. Well, I mean, a rape role.
Rape implies that there is no consent.
But she wanted to simulate an experience of being raped.
It would be a simulated...
But with her knowledge, in fact, as you
Not
say,
only her knowledge, her planning. She said, meet me at this Starbucks and follow me home, then come in the door and do this. So, I had never engaged in anything like this before, so we tried it, and I got to her house, and the door was locked, and I had to shoot her a message and be like, your door's locked, I need you to come unlock the door. And she was like, oh, shit, sorry, be right there. So it was even awkward and clumsy, but it was something that we tried that we never did again, but it was something she wanted to try, and I wanted to be an accommodating partner.
There were screenshots published by Air Mail magazine in which Effie appeared to have told an Instagram follower that she'd had consensual sex, her words, with you, allegedly writing, he is not dangerous.
Yes.
He didn't rape anyone. She also told another follower, allegedly, she was not saying that you had raped her. Airmail reported those conversations took place before she made her initial allegations public.
Yes.
When you saw that report, what did you feel about that?
I wasn't surprised. I knew that she wasn't raped. I knew that she didn't consider it rape. I knew that we had a completely and entirely consensual sexual relationship from start to finish.
In his Airmail interview, Hammer would also reveal that when he was a teen, his youth pastor harmed him. According to Hammer, he believes that due to childhood SA, he developed an interest in BDSM. Hammer's mother, Drew, would also share the same sentiment, and that due to the trauma Hammer experienced as a child, it led him to gravitate towards a certain lifestyle.
It was his youth pastor, and several children were molested at that time. And, you know, as a child, you tend to blame God, and God doesn't fail us. People fail us. So you know, he didn't come out and tell us really that anything happened because he was ashamed. And also, these predators, these molesters, they groom children and they groom the parents. And they look you in the eye and they go to dinner with you and they go on family vacations with you. And we're thinking, oh, he's the youth pastor. It's so safe. And, you know, it's not always safe. And I think that's where a lot of this came from with Armie is, you know, medicating pain. And you know what they say, hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
So, you know, that's a part of my book and a part of my testimony is how I failed because Armie, you know, was ashamed and children blamed themselves. And he said nothing happened when it did. And we were not as proactive as we should have been. And I would love to have a platform because I've been there that, you know, it's not that, you know, don't want to trust our children or what they tell us, but dig deeper because they're medicating and they are ashamed and they blame themselves and that these predators groom the parents.
The incident with this pastor when you were 13, what actually happened there?
There was a pastor in the church that we went to who took an interest in me. And, you know, the words we now know to use is I was groomed by this pastor and then...
In what way?
In all the unpleasant ways.
Did he rape you?
No, I was never raped, but it was...
Physical?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you remember being traumatized by that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you think there's a link between that and then your proclivity for quite extreme sexual behavior?
You know, I don't know is the short answer for that.
I mean, it would screw anybody up. I mean, there's no question
for sure.
of that.
I mean, there's definitely ramifications for childhood sex. Do I think that being introduced to sex in a way where I was completely out of control led to me wanting to be in control in a sexual relationship? Sure, that logically makes sense to me. I mean, I'm not a sex therapist, but that makes sense to me. Do I also think that people like what they like and maybe that can exist independent of trauma? Yeah, I think that exists too. I think, again, there's probably some sort of overlap there. In my family's history, were there dysfunctional people? Absolutely. In anyone's family history, there are dysfunctional people. Does that mean it necessarily is going to directly translate into my life? Maybe in some ways. Is it my fault that there are dysfunctional patterns in my history or family history? No, that's not my fault, but it is my responsibility. And if I don't want to pass that down to my children, I have to turn around and face that and say, okay, I need to do the work on this.
In his interview, Hammer would also reveal that when the allegations first came out, he contemplated taking his own life. Frustrated that Hammer was trying to gain sympathy with his anecdote, Effie took to her Instagram story to call out the disgraced actor. She accused the actor of trying to evoke sympathy by repurposing the same story he once told her. She writes, It seems so manipulative because he knows that this story shut me up last time and evoked sympathy, and it's like now he's trying it again. On May 31st, 2023, 3 months after Hammer's interview, the LAPD announced that they would not be pursuing charges of SA against Hammer. According to the district attorney, after going through phones, emails, and eyewitness reports, they came to the conclusion that there was no evidence that any crime had been committed. In a statement, they said, quote, "Due to the complexity of the relationship and inability to prove a non-consensual, forcible sexual encounter, we are unable to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. SA cases are often difficult to prove. In this case, prosecutors conducted an extremely thorough review, but determined that at this time there is insufficient evidence to charge." In response to this news, Hammer posted the following statement to Instagram, quote, "I am very grateful to the district attorney for conducting a thorough investigation and coming to the conclusion that I stood by this entire time, that no crime was committed. I look forward to beginning what will be a long, difficult process of putting my life back together now that my name is cleared." Following these statements, Effie, the first accuser, spoke out and had this to say to CNN, quote, "I am disappointed with the LA County District Attorney's decision not to prosecute Armie Hammer. I felt a duty to speak out and file a report in order to try to hold Armie accountable for all the harm and trauma he has caused me, and in order to protect other women from experiencing similar abuse."
What was fascinating to me, because I know Gloria Allred very well, is that she dropped representing her.
Yes.
Because she could not get her to sign a sworn affidavit to the effect of what her claimants were saying about you, that it was non-consensual and so on. I mean, that on the face of it is quite telling, that someone like Gloria decided this is not for me, this case, because she couldn't get her client to do this under oath.
Yes.
Did you think that was significant?
Yes. Under penalty of perjury, if she signed this affidavit and it was found to be untrue, she would be in legal jeopardy.
In January 2024, so about 6 months later, Effie didn't just double down, kind of trebled down. She penned an essay for Medium, which is entitled "My Traumatizing Experience with My Rapist Armie Hammer." And she then went into details, calling you a manipulative psychopath, that you'd been so cruel, you'd severely damaged and crushed her, you raped and beat her. She became more and more scared of you. I explained I felt disassociated, overwhelmed with shame and self-blame, frequently nauseous, began self-harming since he assaulted me. I couldn't see him anymore. And she quoted you as saying, "I need to rape you again. Remember when you were on the floor and I walked away and grabbed a knife? You were crying on the floor and I left you there in a pile of tears, grabbed a knife and held it to your throat and raped you more. Everything else seemed boring. You crying and screaming, me standing over you, I felt like a god." I mean, pretty devastating to read that. The quotes that she ascribed to you, were they true?
I don't remember saying those things. I know that...
But they could be true.
I know that we had the encounter that she had planned, and I know that we spoke about it afterwards. I don't know that those were the words that we used.
But you could have said it. It's the kind of language you were using with her.
In the context of a relationship like that, that would be the language that you use, yeah.
But again, your position would be this was role play, fantasy.
Correct.
And one that she was fully on board with.
Correct.
Why would someone who spent so long with you, and you've explained this to a degree, but were you surprised that even when the LAPD didn't lead to any charges being made and the DA's office dropped the case, were you surprised that she then did this piece, as I say, kind of trebling down on what she'd said?
At this point, nothing really surprises me with her.
Do you think she actually, I might have asked you this earlier, but do you think she actually believes this at this stage?
I think that there's a legitimate possibility that she's convinced herself that this is true. But at the same time, I don't know what's going on with her. She's also spent the last year on social media saying that she wants my 9-year-old daughter to be raped. So I don't think that we're dealing with...
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's horrific.
I know. And she's putting this out there on her platform.
Has she tried to contact you?
Well, I have blocked every single avenue of communication. So, I mean, through lawyers, there's been a lot of communication through lawyers of her asking for money and in return for her silence and, you know, extortionate amounts of money. Oh, millions and millions of dollars.
Like what?
Millions and millions of dollars.
10 million?
Not quite that much, but yeah, a lot of money that I don't have, you know. And by the way, even if I did have it, I'm not sure I would give it to her.
Upon news that the LAPD would not be pursuing charges against Hammer, Hammer and his estranged wife finalized their divorce on July 5th, 2023. Elizabeth and Hammer have since been spotted out and about together and seemingly maintain a healthy co-parenting relationship. When it comes to his career, Hammer is seen as damaged goods that nobody in Hollywood wants to touch. But despite the accusations, Hammer maintains his innocence and stands by the fact that he was unjustly canceled. During an appearance on the Painful Lessons podcast, Hammer said this about where he goes from here. Quote, "In terms of my career as an actor, I'm nowhere. I'm not getting jobs. I'm not getting into rooms to meet with people. I'm not a viable commodity for the entertainment industry in terms of the Hollywood system. I'm not welcome to play in that sandbox for right now. I've decided I'll try to make my own sandbox. If you won't let me play in yours, I'll go play in mine."
But have we lost as a society the ability to forgive people who genuinely atone for what they did?
Yes.
And not allow them a second chance? So it seems to me both you and Kevin, having gone through a lot of legal stuff and come out without any conviction, you ought to be entitled to come back. And yet there seems to be no mechanism post-Me Too for anyone to be able to do that. It's like you're almost, you know, you're tainted in a way that seems to me to be unfair because you weren't convicted of any crime. And a lot of it is he said, she said, he said, whatever. But if there's no actual criminal conviction, why are you not allowed to come back? Do you feel that?
Yes.
What's your message to Hollywood producers who may be thinking, you know what, I know they dropped the thing, but I can't touch it?
I think that's a self-fulfilling prophecy.